All right, hello everyone, and welcome to the final talk of this first day, where we shall have some fun with security vulnerabilities. So, please take a look at this chart. I brought you here the number of CVEs that have been published for Checkmk over the recent years. And as you can see, this number has been growing. But to get this out of the way, and because it's in the title of the talk, CVE is short for Common Vulnerabilities and Exposures. And basically, it's just a way to assign a globally unique name to a security vulnerability to make it easier to talk about it and to track it. So for Checkmk, there have been more of these every year than in the year before. And that's not even the aggregated number, that is the number of new CVEs published. So that's pretty bad, right? Maybe Checkmk should try to hire more security people? OK, we did that. And it seems like more security people mean more CVEs. Right. Obviously, it doesn't work like that. And today I want to show you why this is the case, what these security people are doing behind the scenes. And maybe I will even convince you that more CVEs can actually be a good thing, at least from a certain perspective. But let me start with the team. So that is us. Many of you probably already know Max, who is the founder of our team and has been the very first dedicated security employee at Checkmk. And I bet many of you have also already met Aris, who is our CISO. And for the rest of us, well, now you know what we look like, and you can come find us at the party. But now let me actually tell you a little bit about how this team works when it comes to vulnerabilities. And I will do this in 3 parts. First, I will show you what we do in order to find vulnerabilities in Checkmk. Then I will talk about what we do to treat them. And finally, I will also talk a little bit about what we do to prevent vulnerabilities from popping up in the first place. So let's start at the beginning with finding vulnerabilities. There are various sources that inform us about problems in Checkmk. And the first of those is tools and scanners that we have established over the years. And these tools are simply tools that look for patterns in the code base, for example, for things that look like somebody made a mistake that can lead to a security vulnerability, or even tools that try to prevent developers from making mistakes in the first place, such as static type checking. And importantly, it also includes tools that help us keep our third-party dependencies in check. Because Checkmk, like probably every major piece of software nowadays, has a ton of these. And every single one of these dependencies can also have vulnerabilities. And we use a tool called OWASP Dependency Track that informs us whenever one of our dependencies has a CVE published for it. And then we, the security team, can go and check if that's a problem for Checkmk as well. The second source we have for being informed about vulnerabilities are penetration tests. And we commission multiple penetration tests for our products every year. And sometimes the security team also logs up for 2 or 3 days, and we perform some pen tests ourselves. Next up is our security@checkmk.com mailbox, where external reporters can reach out to us and tell us that they have found something that looks like a problem in Checkmk. And the mailbox also comes with a vulnerability disclosure, by the way, that informs reporters about the process we would like to be approached with when it comes to vulnerabilities. And you can find that next to the contact form on the website. And the final category is just suspicious bugs and surprising behavior that we find while working with the code base or with Checkmk. And that sounds a bit sporadic, but it's actually a quite important aspect because, well, after a while, you develop a kind of an intuition about things that can lead to, let's say, fun. Right. So now what do we do about these? I brought you here a graphic that shows our process with dealing with vulnerabilities from the point where we learn about them until hopefully fixing them in the end and publishing a patch. And here the process is displayed as a straight line. I mean, in the real world, of course, it is never that straightforward. Sometimes a step may be skipped, or more often we need to go back a step because we learn some new information. But in general, this will give you a very good idea about how we work. So let's say we have learned about a vulnerability because somebody reached out to us via the mailbox. And the first thing we will do is that we will reach out back to the reporter, try to confirm the issue to them, see if we can reproduce it locally. And of course, if we can't, we will ask for clarification until we are all at the same page and know what we're dealing with. Next thing we'll do is we'll get together in the security team and try to assess the severity of the issue. So here we will try to rate how bad the vulnerability really is. And we do that by assigning a so-called CVEs score. That's short for Common Vulnerability Scoring System. And basically, it's just a way to assign a number between 0 and 10 to a security vulnerability. Such a number is not always accurate. I mean, of course, it can never capture the full reality, but it's very good to have a standardized way to talk about this. And the other thing we do here is that we identify what versions of Checkmk are affected by the issue, so we know where we have to apply the fix and how. And that's actually the next step. We get together again and discuss what we want to do or can do about the issue. Most of the times, this will mean that we mitigate it, so that a fix will be developed. But sometimes the outcome can also be that we actually have to accept the issue. And that can happen, for example, if we cannot remove the vulnerability without removing a popular feature from Checkmk. And in such a case, we might opt to instead add some disclaimer that informs you about the security implications of certain configurations that you want to do. All right, but let's assume we can implement a fix, then we will. So in this step, in many cases, the security team will implement the fix ourselves. But of course, sometimes we also reach out to other developers who are the domain experts in the area where the problem occurs. And we write one of our famous and beloved security works. And that already leads us to the final step, where a new Checkmk version is released that contains the fix, and also a CVE will be published to inform all of you about this. And this part I want to spend a little bit more time on now. Specifically, I want to try to demystify the process of creating CVEs as much as possible. And the first thing to note about this is that Checkmk is nowadays its own CVE numbering authority, or CNA for short, for all of our products. And that means that all the Checkmk CVEs that you see are actually reserved, written, and published by us ourselves. Okay, and to take the magic away from this entirely, if possible, I brought you here now the real terminal commands that we run in order to create CVEs. So the commands are one-to-one what we use. I have just simplified the output a bit to fit the slide. Okay, so in order to create CVEs, we use a tool called CVElib that's developed by Red Hat, and it talks to the API of CVE.org. Now, CVE.org is the project that governs all the CNAs, that hands out the CVE ID numbers to us, and that keeps a database of all the CVEs and a website where you can look at them. So the first thing we'll do is we will reserve a bunch of them, let's say 10. And then CVE.org will give us those numbers. And here I can maybe already get rid of one common misunderstanding, because next to the CVE, you often see the reserved add date, and you might assume that this is the day where the vulnerability was found or where it was fixed, maybe. But no, it's simply the day where the CNA reserved a bulk of numbers. And at that point, the CVE is not necessarily associated to any vulnerability at all. But let's assume we do want to publish a CVE for a specific vulnerability. Then the first thing we'll do is we will create a JSON file in our internal Git repository where we specify all the information about the CVE. And we'll see an example later, but this will contain things like a title and a description for the vulnerability, what product is affected and what versions. It contains the severity score that I talked about briefly before, information about who reported the CVE or the vulnerability to us, and a bunch of other things. And finally, when this is all reviewed within our team, we will use the CVE tool again and just post the JSON file to the API of CVE.org. And then usually within a number of seconds, it will be visible on the website. And it looks something like this. So here you can see the CVE ID at the top. You can see the CNA in this case was us. And well, at the bottom, you can see the severity score in this case was high, and if you were to scroll down, you could also see what versions of Checkmk are affected. Okay, now you know the technicalities of publishing vulnerability information. But there is one more topic that I really want to discuss with you here, and it is a topic that we actually discuss internally a lot as well. Because whenever we publish vulnerability information, we need to strike a balance between transparency and security, because those two can sometimes be opposing goals. Now, what do I mean by this? Let me start with transparency. I think it's fair to say that transparency is very important to Checkmk. We are rooted in open source. We are driven by this great community here. And of course, it is our goal to inform you as soon as possible and in all the detail you might desire when we have a vulnerability in Checkmk. And this is hopefully nice for you, but it's also important for us because it helps us to ensure that actually we work diligently, improve our product, rather than just sweeping issues under the rug. And the last aspect of this transparency is that it also helps us to keep a good relationship with security researchers who reach out to us, because we want to show them that we welcome their input and that we appreciate the time they take to help us make our product more secure. All right, this is all very nice, but we also know that every CVE that we publish can cause worry for you. And while it's of course great if we have a fix in our development branch, the real goal here is to get the fix into your installation so your Checkmk is more secure. And the first thing we need to do for this is that we ensure that a patch is actually available to you when we publish the information about the vulnerability. This sounds a little bit trivial, but it's actually not quite as trivial when you consider that most of our work happens open source on GitHub. And the other aspect to this is, well, of course, we want to ensure that you also apply this patch and that you are aware that it's important that you do. But it's not our goal to cause you rush or alarm or even panic. So we need to be a little bit careful about how we communicate this information. And we also know that we have not always hit this balance perfectly in the past, especially for everybody's liking. And I don't think that we will ever be able to do it perfectly. But let me highlight that we really appreciate your feedback on this topic, so do reach out to us or hit us up at the party. But ultimately, I believe that we must continue to choose transparency where we can, while of course still delivering the security that is the point of this whole exercise here. Okay, now you know our dilemma. There is actually one very easy way out of this. And that is, hey, just don't have vulnerabilities in the first place. Okay, spoiler, we haven't found out a way how to do that quite yet, but we are definitely working on it. And I want to show you a few things that we have improved in the past in order to get there. So yeah, we have refined our processes when it comes to vulnerabilities quite a bit. And much of this has been guided by our recent endeavors to obtain an ISO 27001 certification, which we have achieved last year. And at this point, shout out to Aris, who has definitely been the absolute MVP in this. So this gave us lots of food for thought to reiterate our processes, and it gave us many interesting policies. And if you are into that, I can advertise our Checkmk Trust Center at trust.checkmk.com, where you can see what an ISO certificate actually looks like, and where you can download many of the policies and a whole bunch of other information. But back to our process improvements. So I think one of the most important things this gave us was an early hook for the security team into development's roadmap planning. So whenever developers and product owners design a new feature, they will reach out to us, get our take on the topic, and this way we will be in the know what's going on, and developers will know when they might want to reach out to us for more support. This goes hand in hand with developer training, and personally I'm very proud of the training we do, because we opted to not just have a multiple choice click-through questionnaire, but instead we developed a workshop that discusses topics that are common in the tech stack that we use and real issues that have occurred in Checkmk in the past. And this way I think we can keep it quite relevant to developers' real daily work. On the other hand of the equation is, I believe that we, the security team, work in a very hands-on fashion. So I told you already that we fix many of the vulnerabilities ourselves. But we also help to develop features that are somewhat security critical, and we continue to improve our internal tools and APIs to make it basically harder for developers to make mistakes or make it easier to do the right things. For example, when it comes to working with cryptography. Right, second to last point. So I have shown you our process when dealing with vulnerabilities, but I have actually neglected to mention one important step here, and that is a dedicated lessons learned session at the end. And here we will get together again and consider what we need to do in order to figure out that no similar vulnerabilities exist in Checkmk, and what we need to do in order to ensure that no similar thing happens again. And finally, there is the aspect of becoming our own CNA and publishing our own vulnerability information. And this has really reduced so much friction in our process. I just want to say, if any of you are dealing with publishing CVEs for your company by any chance and talking with Mitra a whole lot, become your own CNA. It is very easy, and it makes it really so much easier. All right, but that already allows me to tie it back to the start. So I have shown you this graphic, and I said I will try to convince you that more CVEs are a good thing from a certain perspective. So did I convince you? I mean, I hope at least that from now on you don't only regard this as the number of vulnerabilities that have popped up, but as the number of vulnerabilities that have been fixed in Checkmk. Because with every CVE that we publish, we make Checkmk a tiny little bit more secure. And with that in mind, I'm looking forward to continuing this journey with all of you together. And I hope that you are looking forward to all the future Checkmk CVEs to come. Thank you very much.